So there are a lot of questions that could be asked when it comes down to contract negotiating time, especially in the NFL. It's a lot of questions that go into play. It's a lot of things that go into play. The Atlanta Falcons yesterday, though, skipped all of those questions and just cut the check. They managed to keep Kyle Pitts on a 3-year, $54 million deal. Shout out to KP for getting his bread. Shout out to the Atlanta Falcons for managing to keep KP, because if he wasn't on the Falcons, I feel like he would have eventually made his way to Kansas City, just my personal opinion, and it would have been a great situation for him. But that doesn't seem like anything to have to worry about anytime soon. Once again, the Falcons re-upped with KP on a 3-year, $54 million deal. That was announced yesterday, and I just want to say congratulations once again to Kyle Pitts, his agent, everyone involved with the deal, the Falcons, everyone involved with the deal to make it happen. Kyle Pitts is an extremely talented tight end, and pause on that, but he's an extremely talented player. His name coming into the NFL, and his name that he's managed to, I guess you would say, keep over his NFL career has been the unicorn, pause, but that's just because he can do so many things, kind of like the NBA's version of what their first unicorn, pause, was, and that was Kristaps Porzingis. When he first entered the NBA, he was looked at as one of those players that can do everything as far as, he can shoot. He was obviously a center, pretty much a center that could shoot, could get to the rims, a little bit, can operate his way in the paint, stuff like that. So he was kind of looked at as a unicorn, pause. Kyle Pitts was looked at the same way as far as being a tight end. He's he's a tight end that plays more and gives you the production more like a wide receiver, because you probably don't want to put Kyle Pitts in the blocks too much. And it's no flack on Kyle Pitts. It's just you naturally want to keep a Kyle Pitts open for actually being able to throw the football to. You don't want to have him tied up in blocks and stuff like that. Now, obviously, being a tight end, you will have to. It is a requirement for you to get into blocks at some point in time. Okay, I love George Kittle, and George Kittle happens to be one of those tight ends that loves getting into blocks and loves blocking and being that extra offensive lineman. He loves doing that, but I'm a huge fan of George Kittle when he's in the blocks, but my favorite George Kittle is when it's like the end of the game for the Niners and it's a clutch game and they're down by maybe a touchdown, or maybe they're leading, or maybe it's a tie game or something like that. When George Kittle finally unleashes and finally starts catching the football and starts running routes and stuff like that, that's when I'm like, yeah, he's cooking right now, because that's when he gets into his rhythm and he actually gets off the blocks and actually has a chance to go catch the football, run some routes, do a couple, use his athleticism. Now, blocking requires a lot of athleticism too. I feel like that gets overlooked a lot of times. Offensive linemen have to be in extremely good shape. And I know people may say, oh, well, the offensive lineman, you're just standing there. Yeah, it looks like that on TV, but I promise you, you go watch any offensive line practice, any offensive line drill, let me tell you, you have to be in shape. Just put into your mind this. Think about all the great defensive players that are in this NFL. All right, think of all these players, okay, in the National Football League, all these great defensive players. Those offensive linemen' job, their job, okay, is to, while it looks like they're just standing there, their job is to stop all of these great defensive players from getting to the quarterback. And they have to do that every play, every drive, every snap, every game, all year. That's their job. So it really ain't as easy as you think it is. So that's why I say Kyle Pitts, you really don't want to put him on the blocks as much. And I actually love the fact, you guys know I'm a Falcons fan, so I actually love the fact that we don't we put Kyle Pitts in the blocks, like I said, sometimes, because as a tight end, you're going to naturally have to block. And as a tight end, that actually plays into your advantage, in my view, because when you block, you kind of lower the defense to sleep. And what I mean by that is you lower them to sleep a little bit, so you block a little bit, you keep blocking, okay, block. And then the defense, over time, they might not do it on the first snap or the second snap, but over the course of the game, they naturally stop paying attention to you because they're like, oh, well, you're not going out for a route, you're just blocking. Okay, so let's focus on someone who's actually catching the football, right? So they stop paying attention to like a Kyle Pitts. They stop paying attention. And then what that allows us to do as the Falcons, or at least the offense to do, that allows the Falcons offense to, when they really need it, like when in clutch moments, when it's time to make something happen, when it's time to make a clutch play happen, that allows the Falcons to like use the fact that the defense isn't expecting Kyle Pitts to do anything. Then that's when you throw the football to Kyle Pitts because they're not expecting it. They're expecting him to block again. He's gonna be on the blocks again. He lined up, on the offensive line, so he probably not gonna do nothing. And then that's when you throw it to Kyle Pitts. That's why blocking is an advantage to any tight end, in my personal view. But with Kyle Pitts, like I said, being more of a wide receiver kind of tight end, like he's not a George Kittle. He's not like a guy that is gonna like be that extra offensive lineman that can actually hold his own against like a top or a marginal, defensive player. Now he can chip, he can hold off, but if it comes down to it, you probably wouldn't want Kyle Pitts. And it's no offense to Kyle Pitts, but you probably wouldn't want KP on the blocks if it really came down to him stopping like a good defensive player, right? Naturally, you want him out. You want him out, and you want him out on out in space trying to catch the football. That's what you ideally want Kyle Pitts. But as a tight end, you naturally have to block. And being 6'6" like he is, he doesn't have a problem with blocking. Like he doesn't mind it. But you don't want to put him in the block so like too much. So I love the way that the Falcons have used him over as far as like actually blocking to his catching ability. Like they use him a little bit as far as blocking, but mostly using him to what he does best, which is his catching ability. And what led to him getting this contract, speaking of his catching ability, it leads us into the fact that he had his best season since his first season last year, having over 900 yards receiving, and that's been his best season since his rookie year. Now, he's played all 17 games in the last couple seasons, but the last couple seasons haven't been anywhere close to what his production was this past season, and he has good reasoning for that. Same with Drake London, who just got paid earlier this offseason as well. They play with a whole lot of quarterbacks. If you think I'm joking, check this out. Kyle Pitts has played with a QB rotation of Matt Ryan, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, Kirk Cousins, and Michael Penix Jr. And going into this season, he also will play with Tua Tagovailoa. So he's done some things in his. Now he did manage to have a 1,000 yard season in his rookie year, and then ever since then, it kind of has tapered off. Now, his second season, he was injured, so I understood. So you kind of naturally have to understand that. He was injured his second year, so he didn't get a chance to play. He also made the Pro Bowl in his first year. He hasn't, managed to make another one since then. But he did get close, and the closest he's ever gotten back, to that 1,000 yard season was this past season where he managed to get over 900 yards receiving. So I think that was just naturally because of how he was actually utilized better this season. What I mean by that is, in past seasons, and maybe you guys saw it if you watch Falcons games, maybe you didn't, but in other seasons, for whatever reason, it seemed like KP at certain times wasn't even an option. Like it really seemed like that. Like it'll be clutch game situations, and they wouldn't even, like, whoever the quarterback was at that time wouldn't even look KP's way at certain times. Now I can't give all the blame to the quarterback, because to the quarterback's defense and different quarterbacks he's played with throughout the course of his career, in past seasons, after his second year, when he finally came back from injury and stuff like that, his third year, stuff like that, and maybe I assume this was because he was coming off of an injury. I'm going to assume that. and give him that benefit of the doubt because he showed he can still play. He still is extremely talented, freakishly talented. But the years after the injury, you really started to doubt, could he still get like that separation? Like you really started to doubt it because it would be times where he'd be on, and his ability is supposed to be a tight end who has wide receiver ability, so he can get separation on corners that other tight ends aren't getting, separation on. He can get that reception. He can get that separation that other tight ends couldn't even probably dream of getting separation on. Like the corners that Kyle Pitts is supposed to be getting separation on, other tight ends shouldn't even be able to imagine getting separation from these corners, right? But after he came back from the injury after his second season, that looked like it started to go away. And I assume that was because of the injury. But he stopped getting separation. He stopped really getting open as much. So it turned into a thing, at least in Falcon circles, put it like that. In Falcon circles, it turned into a question of, does he still have it? And I know that's extremely crazy to say after your third season, but it was a question because everyone wanted to know, like, okay, the talent was there in the rookie season. You got injured your second year, so that's benefit of the doubt. But now that you're back fully healthy, right, you're ready to go, where is the separation? Where is the getting open? Where are the touchdowns? Where is the 1,000-yard season? Stuff like people wanted to know those questions. But I feel like once he got back into a rhythm, and even not even this past season, but the year before this past season, I feel like he started getting back into a rhythm. He started catching touchdowns again. He started getting open again. He started actually beating his corner or beating his whoever they would have on him, his linebacker, corner, safety. He started beating his opponent at those times. He started getting open again. Like I said, getting actual yards in front, like yards of separation between him and his corner again. All those things started to flash on the screen again. So once that question was answered, as far as does he still have the ability after the injury, once that kind of snapped back, I feel like it was no question whether eventually he was going to get the deal. And even if the production wasn't there, because that's the argument that is valid, I can't lie. 1,000-yard season throughout the course of his career. The stats don't lie on that. Like, you can't argue that. He has 1,000-yard season throughout the course of his career, has made a Pro Bowl, and like I said, this past season, he managed to get as close to the 1,000-yard marker as he has in his career, other than his rookie season. So that's a bonus, but to a valid point, that's still not 1,000 yards. But at least it's thriving. At least it's getting there. Like, at least it's visible. Before, like, when he came back in his third season, it wasn't visible. Like, if he could even get back to that point. People didn't know at that point in time. The year before last, it was still like doubtful, but people started to see the flashes again, like the flashes of the greatness of Kyle Pitts. They started to see the potential flash again, the potential that they all fell in love with. I don't know if you guys remember, but it was crazy. That Kyle Pitts draft was incredible. I remember how crazy people went just over the potential of just seeing this freak talent of Kyle Pitts just on any offense, and the fact that he can do everything that a wide receiver can do, but being a tight end, being 6'6", he still has tight end abilities to where he can just simply jump up and get a jump ball, or he can just outrun you on the route because he's just that freaking athletic. So once those flashes started to flash again, once that talent started to flash again, I feel like it was no doubt that he was going to eventually get this contract either way. And I give him props for staying locked in, like, as long as he did, because you guys know the story. Y'all know how this goes. We've talked about it on this channel before. players, and I'm not saying calling out anyone or bashing anyone, but we know how it goes. Okay, a player, right? They have a couple down seasons, or they have years of hearing criticism, or they have years of feeling like they're not valued, or they have years of feeling like that they just don't want to be in this situation anymore. And instead of trying to figure it out, instead of grinding to figure out what they can do to fix it, or how they can improve, or how they can make their situations better, or how they can turn it around, how they can flip the story around, how they can improve on the stuff that they already do well, how they can get back to being as motivated as they once were. Instead of doing that, a lot of times, especially today, I can't lie, and it's not anything about generations, or it's just especially today, a lot of players don't stay locked in long enough to actually fix it. They don't lock in long enough to actually allow the team to have that bounce back season. They don't allow the supporters to see that bounce back season, to see that they still can do it. They just say, oh, well, I'm getting criticized. I don't like that. I gave you a 1,000-yard season. I gave you a Pro Bowl. I'm not getting the football as much as I would like anyway. So that's why I'm not getting my 1,000 yards. That's why I'm not producing. So, hey, if y'all have a problem with me, then trade me then. And then they leave. That's normally how it goes. But Kyle Pitts did the unique thing. And it's not unique to him. I'm just saying it's becoming more rare to see it. He did the rare thing of saying, instead of blaming the fact that I played with 75 different quarterbacks, instead of blaming the fact that I'm not getting the football as much as I would like to, instead of blaming the fact that I was hurt in my second year and I couldn't even if I wanted to get back to 1,000 yards a year after I had 1,000 yards from Matt Ryan. Even if I wanted to make another Pro Bowl, I'm not getting the football enough to where I can get to another Pro Bowl. I'm not getting the football as much as I would like to. And with all of that being the case and being a valid point, he had all of them reasons to complain. I'm talking about all them reasons. He could have cashed in on any one of them reasons to complain and blame the team instead of himself. And give the team, kick the blame on the team and be like, well, I'm cool because, if they threw me the football more, then I have more yards. I have more Pro Bowls. I have more 1,000-yard seasons. He had all those just clear examples of what he could have blamed instead of actually just taking responsibility, putting in the work, being patient, and having faith that it'll come back around for me. And that managed to pay off in this previous season with 900 yards. Having a 3-touchdown game against Tampa. Like, it magically came back around for him. Even in the year before this one, with the Washington Commanders game, where he was a huge reason to why the Falcons nearly almost beat the Commanders in the clutch. Huge coming up with the touchdown catches and stuff like that. Just flashes of stuff like that. When he had every potential opportunity to not take, any responsibility for himself. He could have took all those opportunities I just laid out to blame the team, and it would have been a valid point. It would have been a valid reasoning because, to his point, he has played with 75 different quarterbacks. To his point, he wasn't getting the football as much as he deserved. To his point, other than like this last couple seasons when it was just like straight, no offense to these quarterbacks, but when it was like Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke and people like that, to his defense, they weren't looking to him in the end zone. To his defense, he probably should have been given more opportunities to actually catch the football and be out in space and stuff like that. But he wasn't given those opportunities. Those opportunities were going to other players on the team. So to his point, he had all those opportunities to blame everyone but himself and not take accountability. But you know what? He kept his head down, pause. He went to work, stayed humble, stayed faithful, that eventually, if I work and just shut my mouth and just deal with what it is. Eventually, it'll come back around for me. That's the confidence that I've always received with Kyle Pitts, and eventually, it came back around for him. Not only did he have the 900-yard season this past year, but also staying faithful, staying humble, and just focusing on the work. It led to a 3-year, $54 million deal. So now he's gotten to that second contract, and I don't think, if you don't know what getting to a second contract means in the NFL, basically, in agent terms, and Chill is no agent, by the way, at all. Chill is no agent at all, but from what I have heard and from what that I understand about contracts in the NFL, your first contract is great. Okay, that's wonderful. You made it to the NFL. Congratulations. Props to you. Okay, props to you. That's what's up. You're the 1% of the 1%. Okay, it's so many people that want to be where you are and would kill to be where you are. However, as far as the money and being, good for life and stuff like that, to the point where you never, have to worry about working again or anything like that, you don't get that. You don't get that comfort. You don't get that, breathing room to where you can just be like, okay, I'm good. You don't get that until you get that second contract. Then when you get that second contract, then you can relax and be like, okay, now we can start delegating this different places. Okay, we can start investing and stuff like that, putting this in a position to where I never have to work again or worry about anything after I'm done playing or when I'm done playing. That's when you get that comfort after your second contract. The rookie contract is great. And if you, only manage to get like a rookie contract and then say something happens and you're one of those players that ends up like on low value deals throughout the course of your career, ain't nothing wrong with that. But you're trying, the goal is to get to that second contract to where you really can relax and start to put things in place to where you don't have to worry about working or doing anything else when you decide to retire. So the fact that he's finally gotten to that second contract that I feel like he has deserved, once again, he's played with 75 different quarterbacks and still managed to be locked in enough to actually have another 900-yard season and actually not give up throughout the course of the seasons in the past. I feel like he's deserved that. Same with Drake London. Drake London is in the same situation. Being a Falcons fan myself, Drake London and Kyle Pitts deserve their money 100%. Not only because they're extremely talented players, not only because that they, in my opinion, are the franchise, or can be, if they're not already, they can be one of the franchise cornerstones of this organization, or some of the franchise cornerstones of this organization along with Bijan. Not only is that the case, but also because the fact that when they had the chance to give up, when they had the chance to say, hey, get me out of here, when they had the chance to say, why am I struggling with playing with this quarterback that doesn't know how to get me the football, or when I'm playing with this quarterback or on this team that clearly doesn't know how much of a priority I am because I'm not getting the football as much as I would like. They had all those opportunities to say that and to say that they weren't on a winning team and to say that they weren't competing to their levels of expectation. They could have requested a trade. They could have not re-signed. They could have went on social media and announced their trade request themselves. They could have forced their way out. But instead of that, they stood on their 10, went to work, stayed humble, stayed faithful, and through this entire rebuild, when it does get back on track, when the Falcons finally do find themselves in their identity, when they do find their quarterback to actually lead the ship. And I'm talking about, and MPJ might be that guy. Who knows? Tua might be that guy. But I'm talking about when they really find who that guy is that can lead the ship and potentially get them to a Super Bowl. When they find that guy, a couple of the driving forces will be KP and Drake London. Because those were the two, along with Bijan, of course, because those were the three that stood on 10 when all of them were extremely talented, and you could argue that all three of them have an argument to go to more competitive situations. But they stood on 10, put their heads down, Paul stayed humble, stayed faithful, that eventually not only will it turn around for me as a player, but also it will turn around for us as a team. And that's why they deserve that bread that they got. Shout out to KP for getting that money. Bijan gonna be getting his money in what? Probably about right about a couple minutes, honestly. He gonna be getting his money pretty soon as well. Drake London already got paid as well on a 4-year deal. So KP, congratulations on getting yours. And it's gonna be an interesting season to see how this shapes up. Going into a season with KP going along with Tua. And who knows? Drake London and KP and Bijan might somehow generate something out of Tua that we weren't expecting. So who knows? We'll see what happens, though. But congratulations to KP on getting that bread, man. That's what's up. It's going to be an interesting season this season for sure. And I will be all in attention to watch all of these games to see what this offseason has generated for us. So we're going to see what's up, though. Congratulations, KP.